Good evening, everyone. Welcome to King Dolphin TV. That brand new opening was created by Fet for Hire, and I hope you all liked it. So, I'm Raymond Feliciano. I am the author of the Dolphin Wars series of books, and I am pleased to be here for a special night. We are having a male pilot forum with a distinguished panel of pilots. Before I introduce them, if you have not already done so, please like and subscribe to show YouTube that you love what we're doing here at King Dolphin TV. We have currently two of the panel. The other ones were avoidably detained, but will be coming on throughout the show, and we'll catch you up on them. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce the forum. I would like to introduce Bill Whittle.
Hi, everybody.
And I would also like to introduce Gary Smith.
Hey, how are you?
All right. How we're going to do this is after I introduce the wrench team. Legatus Legionii, Snorta Pupus Q Burr, and our producer and Ace Wrench, Sandra. We also have Rennie A. and Anti-Derivative Jill. They will be helping to keep things orderly and helping to monitor questions. What I do ask is, because of the nature of this interview, please hold on to your questions until I have asked all four of the gentlemen their questions, and then I will open it up to all of you to ask questions. So please hold on to your questions until I give you the cue. All right. So, without further ado, Mr. Whittle, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I am a conservative political commentator. I've had probably 100 million views, I suppose, on YouTube. This is not my primary objective in life. My first goal in life was to be a fighter pilot for the Air Force and go shoot down communists in the upper stratosphere at Mach 3. After that, it'd just be a short step to commanding a Mars mission, and that's the kind of world I grew up in the space age. But I'm very happy with the stuff I do. I get to meet some tremendous people in the military, and of all the high honors in my life, I guess one of the greatest has been I've gotten to be close friends with Bert and Dick Rutan, both of whom are just absolute lifelong heroes of mine, and it's just very strange to be sitting at the same breakfast table with those guys.
Oh, great. Mr. Smith, what tell me a bit about yourself.
Let's see. It started out as running into burning buildings for a career. After 20-something years, I decided that wasn't that great an idea anymore. But I made the fatal mistake of buying a house 2 miles from the airport. And from there, I figured that I should go find something to do. And I started collecting ratings. So I got a couple ratings, had a couple of students as an instructor. I got, CFI, IIMEI. Due to circumstances, I ended up with dual ATPs and 4 type ratings. And wow. I've been chief pilot of a 135, check airman on a 135, and enjoyed the ability to be able to teach some of the retired military guys how to go back over to the sandbox and fly circles around targets. And I did get to go over to Europe on a ferry flight. So that was a fun little adventure. It's one of those things you take off your bucket list, and it's like, okay, did that once, don't need to do it again. But that's about it.
Okay. And so now now that we've introduced ourselves, Bill, how long have you been flying?
I soloed in a glider on the 4th of July in 1991.
Oh, wow.
So quite a few years.
Oh.
And I cannot recommend that strongly enough as a pilot. I've had 3 engine failures in single engine airplanes, which is more than 30 people combined usually have. And all 3 times that glider, not only the glider rating, but the glider training, it's just like a lever in the back of my head. I just all of a sudden got real quiet and I just said, uh-oh. And then just ka-chunk, it's like, well, so you're a glider pilot and you've got, 80 hours in gliders, and this is just going to be your 245th glider landing. And that's exactly how they turned out. So it was 4th of July, 1991 for me.
Okay. How many certificates do you have, sir?
I have an instrument rating.
Okay.
I should have gotten the commercial when I did the check ride for the private, but it's basically just a private pilot's rating. I've got 975.7 hours total. Living in California, 1.8 of those hours are instrument time. Most of my flying has been obviously in light aircraft, and I've done a fair amount of flying in experimental aircraft. I've flown 24 different types of aircraft.
Wow. Nice. Now, Gary, you've told us on how many certificates you have. So how long has it been that you've been flying / instructing?
I've thought about that. I've been an instructor for 22 years. I've been flying 28 years.
Wow. That's a lot of flying, guys.
Yeah.
I've been my flight time. I started in Europe in the 1980s. Maybe got 10 hours there. Ran out of money. Decided to go full hog on my pilot license, and I went through the one of the Part 141 schools and went from 0 to commercial pilot, but never quite got my as we all know, money and airspeed make airplanes fly, and my money ran out. But that's where I've been on my flying. Okay, I'm going to ask Gary first. Can you tell us a little bit more about what got you interested in flying?
Well, really, basically, it was I bought a house 2 miles from the airport, and me and the fire department, we worked 9 days a month, and I needed to find something to do with my spare time. I wandered over to the airport to see what was going on, and ended up getting my private, and quickly realized after you get your private, you can do some, but boy, the first time there's any kind of clouds in the sky, that's not a great thing. So then I got my instrument rating, and I thought that's as far as I needed to get. I didn't need to get any other ratings. Ended up bored with that, wanted to learn more, ended up getting my commercial. Then I got my multi-engine. And then I started working for a company out of Frederick Airport that had, and I got my CFI II-MEI, and then started working for a company out of Frederick that did fixed wing and helicopters, and did some surveys over the Chesapeake Bay at 500 feet for many years, doing the health of the bay for the University of Maryland. And along with that, working there, I ended up getting my helicopter ratings and CFI and helicopters. And just through being in the right place at the right time, or having the students that had a helicopter or R-44, I ended up getting my the SFAR 73 for helicopters for the 22 and the 44 to be able to teach in them also. And then again, being at the right place at the right time, one of the guys from the helicopter school moved on, and then he called me and said, "Hey, we need a dual rated pilot where I'm working right now." And I was retiring from the fire department. So I went down and worked with them. And that's where I ended up getting the type rating in the King Air 300, 350 series to be able to teach.
I'm jealous.
Yep. And be able to do that and then fly that. And ended up with good amount of time in the King Air and doing a lot of instruction. Probably one of the few civilian instructors that would take a King Air and do a full type rating in the King Air, not in the simulator. So I probably typed 30, 40 people in the King Air over the course of my tenure there.
Okay.
And then they got shut down when they got sold, and then that company eventually shut them down. At least the division I was in. Got a job at a 135 flying a jet, and then the owner transferred the jet to another company, and I didn't want to transfer with them to that company. So then did a couple things. COVID hit, and now I work for a company as chief pilot on a Part 91 jet. So, just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
So Bill, you've got about 900 hours.
975.
Yeah. Gary, I'm not going to ask you because you probably got a lot.
Maybe.
At least. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Everybody starts at zero.
That is true. That is so true.
I might have more landings than you, Gary. I bet you got 30 times my total flight time. But in gliders, a lot of those flights are, some of the training flights are 4-6 minutes, that kind of thing, So I guess it depends on. I remember there was a football game where somebody, I think it was against Bear Bryant in Alabama, and Alabama just whooped them. And after the game was over, the opposing coach came over and said, "Well, okay." He was so humiliated. He said, "Well, we got more first downs than you did." And I think it was Bear Bryant said, "Okay, well, next time we'll play for first downs," But yeah, just an observation.
Bill, what made you interested in flying?
I was born in New York City. I grew up in Bermuda. My dad was a hotel manager. Got there when I was 4. And when I was 5, I was still trying to narrow down my career choices to either cowboy or train conductor. And he took me out to Kinley Air Force Base in Bermuda to see an air show. And we sat there in the sun for 2 hours, which is a long time when you're 5 years old. That's a long time. That's what I remember, just really long time. But we got there, and there were these 6 jets. The Thunderbirds were there. They're flying F-100 Super Sabres, which is still my favorite aircraft, I think. And they fired them up, and they closed the canopies. They walk out in formation, all that other stuff, take off in formation, and they disappear. And I thought, it wasn't bad, but I don't know if it was worth 2 hours, because I had no idea what was going on. Now, this is back before the big Ramstein crash, and before they obviously made the pretty sensible idea to keep all of the air show activity, parallel to the audience. Anyway, we're sitting in the bleachers. These guys are in the arrow formation, all 6 of the Thunderbirds out over the ocean behind us. The guy who's down there during the narration is looking past the bleachers to these guys out at sea. And these guys are coming in just under the speed of sound. I mean, just under. And I'm sitting in the bleachers, and the guy says, "Ladies and gentlemen, United States Air Force Thunderbird." It started out right on the butt on birds. This like aluminum overcast. And these 6 red, white, and blue jets flew over, and I dropped my ice cream cone, and that was the end of it for little Billy. I was done at that point. I knew what I wanted to do, and I spent the next 12 years getting ready for the Air Force Academy, and failed the vision test by such a small margin. I didn't know I had a vision problem until I came out of that test. So then a lot of time went by, and I decided, went for my first ride in a glider, which really surprised me because first of all, there's a canopy and a stick, the way God intended, and you don't have to look at your propeller because there isn't one, and you can make jet noises and pretend you're flying a jet. And we went in there and did aerobatics and stuff, and I thought this is pretty close. This is pretty cool. So that's where most of my flying has been in light or experimental aircraft, gliders, that kind of thing, and it's without question the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I love everything about it. After I saw the Thunderbirds, and before I went to the examination in 1976, I had built every single aircraft in the inventory at 1/72nd scale models. I must have built 30 F4 models at 1/72nd scale. I had a giant diorama on my ceiling. I had a B-52 escorted by F4s. I had MiG-21s coming in on the other side. So I knew my stuff. And when I finally got started in the training, it was great because I roomed with my instructor and the tow pilot. You mentioned earlier, Ray, about being powered by money, and the only way I was able to get that rating was to go out and work in the glider port. So I was in charge of the ground operations there, and it had been taken over by a guy who's a former Navy test pilot named George Watkins. And his attitude was, if the staff isn't working just continuously, then they're planning the ritual murder and cannibalization of those senior officers. So he had me out there raking rocks in 120-degree temperatures, and it was worth every second. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, good. Let's see. Okay. Gary, what challenges did you face at any time in training or flying after training was complete? And think about that question, Bill, because I'm going to ask you that same question.
Okay.
I think part of the biggest challenges is just pushing yourself to, you're sitting there getting training and thinking, well, what have I got myself into? Because some of it seems like it's beyond you, and it really isn't. They say, how do you eat an elephant? The answer is one bite at a time. And that's how you got to go about training. You get out of training and it feels great when you're done. Certainly when you get your ticket in your hand or you've accomplished something. I think the biggest challenge is getting to break that ceiling of not having any Jet A time. Once you got some Jet A time in anything, that opened more doors because, and I think it's a fallacy because it's easier to fly something that burns Jet A than it is to fly a piston twin or a piston single. I think they've got it backwards. Even in training, you take the brand new flight instructor and you put them with the brand new student. Well, the brand new flight instructor doesn't know the 400 ways that student sitting in the left seat is going to try to kill you. I think they should take a brand new flight instructor and give them a commercial pilot, or if they're a CFII, give them an instrument student and let them figure out how to be an instructor before you put them in an airplane with somebody that has absolutely no understanding of what to do and unknowingly knows about 400 ways to kill you.
Can I just add something to that real quick?
Sure.
Because I couldn't agree with you more, Gary. And I remember just being really shocked to realize that flight instructor was essentially the first paying job that virtually every pilot in the country has. And that the flight training was being done by people who were building hours so that they could get a job as commercial pilots. And you're absolutely right. Many of those instructors are pretty raw. And I think that's a tremendous suggestion. I was lucky because I had great flight instructors, but I do remember thinking, oh, so the first thing you do when your first paying job ever is to go out and teach other people how to fly.
Yeah, it's the way you break in so you quit bleeding money in your flight training, but the system has some flaws in it. They give you the fundamentals of instruction. Okay, fine. They don't teach you anything about what you really need to do as a flight instructor, which is market yourself, which is how to understand people. You're going to teach somebody that knows or does computers for a living a whole lot differently than you're going to teach somebody that's an artist or an interior designer. You know, the computer guy wants it all broken down into steps and this and very logical, and the interior designer wants the big picture, and then you slowly fill it in.
And and you also got to take a look at the age factors too, because 15, 16-year-old is going to be physically more able to handle things as opposed to someone in the 50s or 60s who is trying to get their private pilot license.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that statement 100%. They're going to have more endurance. They're going to be able to do longer flights and maybe 2 or 3 lessons a day, where, you know, somebody that's, you know, out of their teens, you know, is not going to want to sit in a 172 in 90-degree heat for 4 or 5 hours a day. But I've seen older guys that are great sticks. I mean, there are guys you just shake your head. They haven't flown in 2 years. They come out to you for a flight review and they put the airplane on like a pair of pants. And you're sitting there going, why am I here? And you have guys that have a lot of time, and you're looking at them going, hey, you're a commercial pilot. You need to land on the little white lines that go down the center of the runway, not on the other one half or the one side or the other. So it depends on their precision, their experience, and their level of commitment, I think, also.
Plus, I think survival is based on judgment. And certainly my judgment is improved as I've gotten older. I remember one of the things a flight instructor told me early was, and this is an old aviation saw, but they said basically if you're going to fly, you start out with these 2 bags. One bag is full of luck and the other bag is called experience, and there's nothing in it. And your job is to move all the stuff in the luck bag into the experience bag without getting killed. And that's basically how I look at it. I think older people would come at it with a far better sense of judgment. And I think that more than makes up for the reflexes that younger people would have.
But all in all, you have to tailor the various instruction, to what you have.
I mean, you just have to go to an airport. I mean, getting started in flying is a young man's opportunity. I mean, if you're a woman, you want to meet guys, go to the airport. And if you're a guy and you want to meet girls, go to the equestrian center. That's generally how it works. Usually about 1 in 9 men at the equestrian center and 1 in 9 women at the airport. But everybody that I've ever known who was really, really into flying had the hooks in them real early and started pretty young.
Yeah. Now, the question that I asked Gary about the challenges that you faced anytime in training or flying after training.
When I was training in gliders, one of the I'd already soloed it, I think 7.5 hours or something. And one of the requirements for the license is a spot landing. You've got to be able to put it down within, I think it was 200 feet past a marker and not 1 foot short of it. And so I took this big blue tarp, it was about the size of a big tablecloth, and put it out there on the approach end, landed in the dirt out there. And this was going to be my marker. So I was coming around and I'm looking for this thing, and it wasn't easy to find as I thought it would be. And when I finally saw this thing, I landed looking down and to the right instead of looking at the horizon like I should have. So the particular glider I was in had a single main center wheel and a nose wheel and a tail wheel. No two mains. So I came down and hit the nose wheel. Nose wheel bounced the nose up. That increased the angle of attack, and I went up again, and then found myself in a PIO, which I'd heard about, but until you've actually been in one, it gets your full attention. I remember during that couple of seconds that I just was saying, don't bury the wings, just keep the wings level. This thing will eventually stop. It doesn't have an engine. And when it finally did stop, I just taxied off the runway there, and I tried to get out of the the cockpit. I just, my knees were just weak. Called my flight instructor, who's was a good friend of mine, and like I said, I just barely soloed. I hadn't got the private yet, and I said, Jeff, I think I might just crash the airplane. He says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, that's a good landing. How about the airplane? Is the airplane still usable?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, it seems, and it's a great landing." And he said something very important to me that I never forgot. Many things he said I never forgot. But right at that moment when I was just completely shaken up, he said, "You know, you really got lucky, Bill. You got scared real bad and it didn't cost you anything." And I thought, wow, that's definitely a good way to look at it.
Yeah. We have just joining us in the panel, we have Ritch Judy. He's a CAP pilot, and I will ask him a couple questions. How are you doing, sir? First off.
Doing good. How are you doing?
Oh, it's good. We have a ATP Gary Smith, and we have private pilot and YouTube personality Bill Whittle.
Hey, all right, great.
So, before I continue with the line of questioning, I'm going to ask you. Tell us a bit about yourself, and I'll have you do the. Tell us a bit about yourself. What certificates you hold, and how long you've been flying, all at once.
All right. So I am a commercial multi-engine instrument guy. I also have a tailwheel endorsement and a seaplane rating. I have been flying since birth. My family has all been pilots. My earliest recollection is of my dad strapping my brother and I in the back of a Super Cub. And for those of you that know what a Super Cub is, the back the back seat is not that wide, and we have. Strapping my brother and I going, and going for an airplane ride. That's kind of my earliest memories. I know that, and then, just kind of, done things from there. I got my private certificate in 95. I got my instrument rating in 96. I got my commercial rating in 2000. And I got my multi-engine rating in 97. I did what's called a visual flight rules or non-instrument rated multi-engine rating, and then I added the instrument rating later. So, like I said, I've been flying for about 25 years. I have just over 1,800 flight hours. Fly approximately 250 to 300 hours a year, mostly with Civil Air Patrol. I fly probably half to 3/4 of that time with Civil Air Patrol, and then half to 3/4 just privately. So it's a hobby of mine. I love it to death. By way of a professional career, I'm a IT project manager, and this is just it's a great way to spend your time. I've met lots of awesome people through Civil Air Patrol. Through just flying in general, gotten to see lots of the country that I would really not have seen had I not been a pilot. So very long answer to a very short question.
Nothing wrong with that. That's why I just wanted to catch up. And for those in the chat, his name may sound familiar. He was on with us at the CAP's 80th anniversary interview way back in the day. So that's where you may remember Colonel Judy. So let's see. I'm going to, let's see. Any one of the three who want to chime in, I'm going to ask this question. What opportunities do you think are there for pilots who don't want to fly for the military or the airlines?
Well, I tell you, I'll go ahead and kind of lead off on that one. I know several guys that they went through the airline training and went through all of the things that the airlines make you do, and at the end of that training, they realized that it was not for them. So I know three of them actually got on with some corporate operators. One of them flies for a smallish company called PNC Bank. Very small company. I'm sure you guys haven't heard of it.
Nah.
And another one flies for another very small company called they have a fleet of 27 airplanes, and the airplanes are going nonstop 24/7, going overseas, staying domestic. And he is very, very happy. And then I met a pilot for another very small company called Walmart. And I have actually been to the Walmart aviation department. I was an intern for Walmart, back in the day, and got to visit their aviation department. They have not only airplanes, but they also have helicopters and small turboprops that they use to get into the smaller fields where their stores are located. And again, they have been very happy, very successful. So yeah, you don't have to go to the airlines if you want to make a career out of aviation.
Okay.
It's never been a better time for it, though, right? I mean, in terms of market demand, the airlines just can't find enough people, especially since last couple decades where these regional airlines and smaller aircraft on shorter routes have just really opened up, and there's just a tremendous demand for pilots. When I was thinking about this 30 years ago, there were all these guys coming out of Vietnam and lots of military pilots entering the system, and not nearly so many opportunities, especially in the smaller regional jets and stuff like that. My glider flight instructor got his first job as a airline captain on small regional flights for American Eagle, I think it was.
And Gary, you're proof that you don't need to be military or in the airlines.
No. The thing is, right now, the way the market is, if you get your ratings and get enough time to get close to an ATP, then you'll be able to get a job at a 135 or something that's smaller if you don't want to go to the airlines. The biggest thing is nowadays is people are looking at quality of life. They're not willing to sacrifice 4 or 5 years of their life living out of a suitcase, living at the airport for 8 or 9 hours a day, maybe not getting a flight and not getting paid to do that. Mm-hmm. There's a small revolt now because there are so many positions out there where, you're 7 on, 7 off. You're not running 5 to 7 legs a day. And I have a whole personal thing where I believe that the aviation industry is looking at it backwards, where they say, oh, you have a 14-hour duty day and all of this. Yeah, that's important. But you probably need to have some kind of limitation on how many legs a day you do. Because after about 3 or 4 legs, you're done. And even with the airlines where they hand you everything and they do all the work, it makes it easier. But on 135, you're doing everything. You're loading the bags, you're dealing with the passengers, you're cleaning the airplane, you're doing your flight plans, you're filing them, you're loading the FMS, all of that. And about the 4th time you do that, your brain starts to go to mush.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree totally.
I'm sorry, Raymond. I can actually comment on that. During Part 91, I had an autopilot problem that I was trying to get sorted out. with one of the airplanes that I fly. It's my uncle's airplane, and so yesterday I actually took off work and took it to the shop, and we did 3 test flights, and then to fly back to home base. And you're exactly right. And I wasn't loading an FMS. I wasn't following a flight plan. This was all visual conditions. But when I got back to home base, I mean, my brain was just absolute mush, and I didn't want to do anything the rest of the day except just veg out in the chair. So yeah, I mean that's a very real problem.
Oh, and I agree with all of you. I did the airline route as a flight attendant, and we as flight attendants go through the same thing, except we're in the flight deck, and and we didn't have duty day restrictions. If they wanted to give us more than the 14 hours, they would give us more than the 14 hours. So it's not for everybody, either side of the deck.
Well, the other thing, Ray, is that for all the 135 operators that are out there that try to do a good job, there are some that are what I call running a 134.5, where on paper it looks good, or you have non-certified dispatchers dispatching. I don't care how good you are, you're not going to get a jet turned around on the ground in under an hour. And their paperwork says, 30 minutes on the ground. Never happens. Then you start running late. You do that 2 or 3 times on a 4-day leg. Now you're an hour and a half or so late. Now you're running into your duty day restrictions. And then when you tell the chief pilot, hey, we can't take off because we're going to be out of time before we land. Well, do you need to figure that out after you take off? No. So I ran into some, I call them 134.5 operators. And unfortunately, there are a lot of them out there. There are a lot of good 135s out there. But you got to be careful as a brand new pilot, and all you see is the shiny thing that burns Jet A, and you don't care about that. But you're not going to get anywhere if you end up getting violated by the FAA.
Yeah.
I was violated by the FAA would just be a great T-shirt. I think I could make a fortune off of that.
That and the shirt that says the FAA, we are here to help you, or we are not happy unless you're not happy.
That's I have heard all the horror stories about the upcoming big retirement of all the Vietnam era pilots and stuff like that. Do you think again, anybody can chime in. Do you think that that's going to continue to be an issue, especially in these times of, or is it a non-issue, especially in these times of the bug?
Raymond, it's only going to accelerate. You see the staffing shortages now, and the regionals just clamoring for any kind of warm body that's got 1,500 hours and a couple hundred hours of cross country time and 20 hours of multi, or whatever the requirements are. I mean, it is definitely real, and it is only getting worse. I know I am contacted daily by aviation recruiters that want to talk to me about either this airline or that airline or this 135 or that 135 or this Part 91 gig, flying for a family that's got a Gulfstream. It is amazing that a guy who spent 20 years in IT, who's just kind of worked his way up and gotten his ratings and such, is now being looked at as somebody who could be a professional pilot. It's amazing. It's only going to increase.
I think the other scary thing is that you're flying in a regional jet, and there's a high probability that you have just as much time or more than either one or both of the guys sitting up front.
Ooh.
And I'll tell you something else I'm worried about. And we can see this a little more clearly from watching overseas operations, because there's, just come out and say it, I mean, their standards are not nearly as high as ours. So what you find with a lot of guys who are flying 737s and so on out there, especially in the third world, is these guys not only don't have a whole lot of flight time, but their training consists of do these things in these order. Here's your checklist for every one of these things. And if you do those things, then you'll be able to, command the airplane and so on. But what we're seeing again and again and again is that anytime there's anything that's out of the ordinary, a lot of these guys just don't have the faintest idea what to do, because they've been trained by the numbers, and that this is how you do these things. Here's your takeoff checklist. Do all these things in the right order. And I'm real concerned that the upcoming pilot shortage is going to reduce our training standards that way. I mean, if you really think about it, one of the things that was the most embarrassing to me when I was learning how to fly was just how much better an autopilot could keep a course than I could. I was just embarrassed by that. But if everything is going well, automation is, the reason you have human pilots on board, primarily, in my opinion, from the outside, is you need guys who are there when things don't go according to the checklist, when they're not standard or normal. That's where the human element saves lives. And the more mechanical this training gets, and the less actual, well, just not forget even emergency procedures. I mean, I don't know about you two guys, but I know a lot of young pilots who've never done spins, never done slips, just fundamental air work. And that's the stuff that seems to be constantly in the forefront when you hear these stories about flight crews saving entire aircraft in an emergency situation.
Well, and to kind of piggyback on that, there are some flight instructors out there that think that slips are wrong and you should never ever do a slip.
Yep.
How many of them have been in a cub where you don't have any flaps and you're a little bit high and you got to get down?
Yeah, it's shocking. When I got my instrument rating, I was with a flight instructor, and anything more than a 30-degree bank, and she started to freak out. And my first solo flight in a glider, I was 2 knots above the stall. I was in a 60-degree turn, and I'm going up, and I don't have an engine, and that fundamental airmanship seems to be becoming more and more rare. I think you're right, Richard. There's a school of thought that says, let's not scare these people. We don't want to scare our students. And my attitude to my flight instructors was, I want you to push me really hard. My flight instructor, Jeff Larkin, said so many wise things to me, but the one thing I remember more than anything, I think this was my second or third flight lesson. We're walking out to the glider, and basically he said to me, Bill, it's possible that when you're up there, something could go really wrong. And if something really does go wrong, then the reptile in your head is going to take over. And my job is to make sure that the reptile knows what to do. And I thought, man, oh man, oh man, that is just absolutely the essence of what good training is, is so that when you do things in an emergency, you do the right things. And while engine failures are extremely rare, even in single engine piston airplanes, rope breaks are not in glider operations. So we were doing rope breaks we started at 800 feet, worked it down to 600 feet, then went down to 400 feet. And I kept saying, how low can we do this safely? So every flight I took for the first 30 hours of flight time I had in gliders, I was fully expecting the engine to fail, meaning the rope would break. And that never left me. Every time I ever advance the throttles, I'm always expecting that I'm going to lose power at the worst possible time. And most of the time I'm pleasantly surprised when that doesn't happen.
Well,
and go ahead, Gary.
What this point is that there are two kinds of flight instructors. There are the ones that are out there that are dedicated to teaching their students the right way, spending the time with them, going over the ground, taking them up in the flights, working with them to find where their weak spots are and to challenge them.
Right.
And they're the ones that are, I got 35 more hours until I can apply to the airlines.
Yep.
And they don't want any dings on their record, and they don't want anything. And their attitude is the airlines don't care how many times the student passed or didn't pass, or I'm even safer if I don't recommend somebody. And then the FAA is not on my back for a failure, and just move on to the airlines. And we're doing ourselves a disservice by, I think the chief pilot of the 140, the 141, or the Part 61 school has to watch those flight instructors and see how they handle themselves, because ultimately they're the school's customer. And if you don't teach flight instructor a little bit of marketing and a little bit of how to deal with people, you get these kids that come out of school, they get their CFI, their double I, and they've never held any other job in their whole life. And they don't know what it entails, and they don't know what customer service is.
Just out of curiosity, did you guys, did all three of you get spin training when you were learning how to fly?
Oh yeah.
I didn't get it, in my initial, but my uncle is a former DPE, a long time CFI, II, MEI, and I said, hey, Unc, let's go out and spin the Cub, and we spun it through, awesome. 3 or 4 revolutions, and that was a real eye opener.
Because the reason I ask is because they always teach you how to get out of a spin, but not a lot of instructors actually put you in one. And I'm here to tell you that being in a full spin gets your full undivided attention. That is a memorable experience, and it's not until you see, this is the same kind of thing happens with firearms training too. You can tell people all you want to about the right procedures, but what you don't take into account in that classroom setting, or even in the aircraft, if you don't do it, is you don't factor in what the adrenaline does to you, because the adrenaline will make you stupid.
Yes.
And that's what my flight instructor was saying, was I've got to teach the reptile what to do, meaning that when you are immediately stressed, you will do the right thing automatically. You won't have to think about it. You will automatically lower that nose when you lose power. That's the first thing you're going to do, is you're going to drop that nose. It's instantaneous. And that kind of aggressive flight training saved my life on several occasions. And I'm very worried that it's going rapidly out of style. Rich, you were talking about being a kid and basically growing up in an airplane, especially a Cub. Once I heard Cub, I said, this guy knows how to fly for sure. No, seriously, because that is a stick and rudder airplane, and as you know, as I'm sure all of you know, the greatest saying ever about a Cub is it's so pilot friendly it can just barely kill you. And that kind of that I think Gary was saying, the 2 different schools of thought. We need to get rid of that. Let's not scare the students. Let's not upset the students. Let's not test the students. We really, really need to get out of that. And we need to get back into, no, let's scare the living hell out of people, and so they know what to do if this should ever happen.
Yep.
Yeah, probably one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard in my life, was when I was doing my initial tailwheel training, and I had a 25,000 hour, ATP. He, owned an aircraft management business, flew everything from Cubs to Gulfstreams and Challengers, and has more aviation knowledge in his little pinky than I'll ever have. So we're taking off on the very first time, and he's kind of talking me through it, and we get off the ground. We come around on the downwind. Well, I'm starting to fly kind of a normal Cessna pattern, half mile from the runway, so on and so forth. And we're about midfield on the downwind, and he says, Rich, I got 25,000 hours. I think that's enough. I don't need to build any more time. I'm going to show you Super Cub patterns. And he showed me Super Cub patterns. And that was the most fun I've had. And I forget, Bill, if it was you or Gary who said, that anything over 30 degrees, the instructor started to freak out.
Yeah,
Okay, I go out and I do steep turns for fun.
Just for
At
fun.
45 and 50 degrees, I do them for fun.
I don't think I ever made unless the airport was busy. If it was relatively slow, I think every single time I ever requested landing clearance, I asked for short approach, just to practice. I just kill the engine on the downwind and just to keep that energy management proficiency. The thing about that without an engine, obviously, is you've got a bank account, and your bank account consists of altitude and airspeed, right? And you can spend it as fast as you want to, but if it's gone, you can't get it back. So this whole idea of, get the airplane into a position where you now have enough energy to land the airplane, then you can dump it. You can slip, or you can, use spoilers or flaps, whatever you need. But for God's sake, get the airplane to a place where you will have enough energy to be able to safely land this airplane if the artificial energy source should suddenly get quiet. And like I said, I've had that happen to me 3 times.
Have you guys ever seen the Bob Hoover Act?
Yes, it's miraculous.
Absolutely.
Miraculous.
So I live.
I did too. That is energy management right there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Just for people who haven't seen it, Bob would take a twin engine airplane, right? And he would basically didn't he just dive down, have enough energy to pull up into a roll or a loop or something?
He would do. He was a twin engine commander,
right?
And he would take off, climb up, turn the engines off, feather both propellers, do a loop, do some other stuff, come back in, all dead stick, land, taxi off, and get to his parking spot.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Bob Hoover's the best pilot.
Yeah, just go YouTube Bob Hoover Energy Management Series, and it is incredible. He does a loop, a roll, a 4-point roll, a 16-point roll. I mean, just maneuvers that you're like, how does he do this without engines? And you're right, it is all energy management.
And he does it in an airliner, for God's sake. He's not in a bus or something. I mean, he's flying like a regional airliner and doing this stuff.
I wouldn't say the Turbo Commander was a regional airliner.
Well, what I'm saying is twin engine airplane, with a bit of a cabin. It's not exactly an aerobatic special.
He does it with a cup of coffee on the dash and doesn't spill the coffee.
I hate his guts.
Let's take this moment to welcome Scott Florek, private pilot. How are you doing, Scott?
Doing really well. Yeah, thanks for letting me come in here a little bit late there. It's life on the planet, but I appreciate it. I'm enjoying coming in there and hear all the conversations. It sounds like everybody's got some awesome experience.
Oh yeah. I just heard a chuckle in the background by my producer. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your flying experience, Scott.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty low time pilot, but I've been learning a lot the last couple of years. I guess my flying history. So I'm a physical therapist by profession. I live in Winchester, Virginia. I have a physical therapy practice. It's been really busy. We got ourselves established in Winchester, so now it's kind of gotten to the point where can manage my time a little bit better with that. So my flying history was. So part of our physical therapy practice in our training is I went and did some contract work for about 5 years. And we were all over the country. Went on, West Coast, East Coast, kind of like an extended honeymoon for my wife and I, who's also a physical therapist. And one of our job assignments that we had, we were in, I think we were in like Middlebury, Vermont. And I was halfway through like a 3-month assignment. And I was just talking to the lady that I was working with, and she was talking about her having her private pilot certificate. And I was like asking her more questions about that. She's like, "Oh, my husband's a CFI." It's like we took the bait hard, of course. And she's like, "Oh, if you ever want to go up with them," and of course we went in and did our first couple flights and started taking lessons in Middlebury, Vermont, which was a real small airport with mountains on both sides. Not probably a great place to do your first few hours of flying. But because we were on contract, I only was able to do like 10 hours there. But my wife and I kind of got the bug a little bit. And so we said, let's, if we're going to do another assignment, let's go someplace where the weather's really nice. So we actually found a job assignment out in Tucson, Arizona. So we went out and did the rest of our flight training at Ryan Airfield out in Tucson, which is a great airport. It was parallel runways, ATC controlled. So you got the really good experience there. And Kelly Stites, I still remember that lady. This was many years ago. She was a great pilot. And my wife took lessons with a lady who is a much more seasoned older lady pilot. We called her Amelia Earhart. She just is like one of those practical knowledge airport, ladies that could teach, anything. And so she had great, I always kind of say my wife seemed to land it a lot better than I did just because of the experience level that she, and the experience that she gave to her. So, but anyways, yeah. So like after we, were flying around for a while, we had our first daughter, and of course I became one of those rusty pilots. So I didn't get a chance to fly for about, probably 8 or 10 years. And then we moved to Winchester. We're about 4 miles from the Winchester airport. So I keep seeing the planes going over in a pattern, like over top of us. I was like, I got to get back up there. So got back into the books, and I got with a flight instructor, went up, and I actually did the Rusty Pilot program from AOPA, which was really nice. I mean, I would say that it was a good program, but not enough to get you back up in the air safely after 10 years. Let's put it that way. Okay? So, but yeah, so I got in there and did some work with some flight instructors around here and started renting planes and so on. And then probably more recently, within like the last probably 3-4 years, I joined the Civil Air Patrol up in Martinsburg, which, really aims a lot at proficiency and consistency of flying. And the instructors there were great. And, it's a high performance airplane. So I learned a ton from that and the instructors there. And now the more frequent flying is just, allowing me to continue to learn. And, so now I'm in the books again for my instrument training. And, it's just, I think you need that consistency in that to be proficient. You just can't come in and expect that you're going to, fly every 3 months and get your currency in there and be okay with that. So it's been a great experience for me, and I've been loving it. So I'm definitely going to go towards, now I'm starting to see instrument rating more as it's just safer to do so. It's almost like a necessity. There's no reason not to do it, to learn about the whole communication system and the way all the procedures work. Just, I think, makes you a safer pilot. So that's my next goal of my flying career there.
Somebody told me as a private pilot, they said the great thing about the instrument rating is not so that you could fly into IMC, but so that you could fly out of it.
Yes.
And I thought, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I use. That's what my instrument rating is.
Now, does your wife, Scott, does your wife have a pilot license too?
She did get her private at the same time I did. It was like in about 2005. And we flew up about the time where she couldn't pull the yoke back anymore because of her being pregnant with her first child. So, and then I think just, being a mom and all that kind of stuff got her a little busy on other things. So she is willing to want to go up with me, but I don't think she has any desire to kind of continue flying again. But that might change. You never know.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Hey, Scott, please don't lay any more praise on those instructors at Martinsburg, the CAP instructor. They're going to get big heads, and then we're just not going to be able to deal with them. So
exactly.
Hey, my wife's one of those instructors.
Well, if there's anyone that can kind of give them some humble pie, it'd be you, Rich. Sandra told me stories about how you've given her a hard time on her check rides. And
she is actually a product of the Gary School of Flight Instructor. So,
and Ray, tell her my Venmo account is open and ready to receive funds to stop telling stories about her.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Scott, you mentioned Tucson. Most of the time I have is in gliders, a light airplane called a Sky Arrow, which is great, and a Long Easy, and they're all pushers, well, except for the glider. And the reason I flew those was because if I don't have a propeller in front of me, I can make jet noises in my head and fly around. And I was coming into Tucson from Los Angeles in a Long Easy, which is a pretty slick little airplane, and I was on the parallel for the smaller runway. And these 4 F-16s just went buzzing right past me. They're going to do the midfield break, and they did their break, and I had to bite my hand to not turn after those guys. Honest to God, I was like, they're just such beautiful airplanes. Lots of Arizona Air National Guard coming out of Tucson Airport. I used to love to just watch them.
Yeah, Ryan Airfield was a real interesting airfield because the one flight school there trained a lot of the Chinese pilots that were over there. That they would send them over there and they go through the flight school all the way up until they're like their multi-engine, and then they would send them back out of there. So the interesting story I always had about my check ride is I get up and go out and do all my maneuvers and come in, and we're coming in on our last landing to kind of finish everything up. and we get cleared on I don't remember exactly what the direction of the runway was, but it was like, I think we were cleared for like 2.6 left or something like that. And so we're coming in on the downwind, we're all set up, and there's one of the Chinese pilots coming in, but he was coming in on the opposite direction. So he either couldn't communicate or didn't understand, lost comms or did something. So, ATC said, go ahead and just extend your downwind. So we're, I'm freaking out now, of course, because I got the guy giving me my check ride. So we're like way out there. We probably flew out about 6 miles to get this guy on the ground finally. And so they finally clear us back in, and I'm coming in, and we're all lined up, and I got this all stabilized. I'm coming in, and the instructor next to me, he's like, did he clear you on 2.6 left or 2.6 right? So I just real casually did my side flip over to 2.6 left, and I was actually lined up on 2.6 right. He's like, I'll give you a bye on that one, since you were about 6 miles out there, and the confusion with that pilot. I was like, whew, but that's the way that place operated. It was a lot of like just hustle bustle going on there too. And I guess the other story I had with Tucson, you said about the cool planes, is I remember doing my I don't remember if it was like your flight into a big airport, because Tucson International was like right there also. Same thing, parallel runways. I remember coming in, and I'm in a 150, and we're kind of coming in on our descent there, and I look off kind of like out of my peripheral vision on the left hand side, and there's like a Learjet coming like parallel with me coming in at the same time, and I'm like sweating bullets. I'm like I'm like side to side with the Learjet, and I'm in a 150 just kind of tugging along. So that was a fun experience though.
I know, Bill, you talked about adrenaline. I wanted to relate what happens when adrenaline makes you stupid. What should have been the best moment of my flying training was my solo, and I took off after the pilot got out and said, go for it. Took off and did my one pattern, came back down, taxied. And before that, he said, okay, you could either wait or you can go back up. So the adrenaline's going. My brain just got smaller. I decided to taxi. I passed the no-go line, and I had the controller say, did I just ask you to get on the runway? I said, no. This is stupid student pilot just doing his first solo.
That's what they want to hear, is when you make a mistake, they want to hear that you made a mistake and that you admitted it, and that they can tell from the tone of your voice that you feel like a jackass. The people that they go after are the ones who show no remorse, no understanding, no regret. Everybody makes mistakes, and my experience has been that if you just fess up to it, and make it pretty clear, you realize I just did something really dumb.
Yeah.
Most times they'll say, okay, well, this guy's, he's on the right team. He's not somebody we're going to have to break, to make things safe here.
Exactly.
Well,
all right.
That's true. But the one course I took in college that opened my eyes to that whole thing, it was an aviation law course. Mm-hmm. And if you don't take any other courses, that would be the one I'd highly recommend, because what it taught me was that you're guilty until proven innocent. So if the 4 of us or 5 of us sit down and go to lunch and we talk about how we flew our little planes underneath the Bay Bridge, let's say, and there's an FAA examiner there, he will violate every one of us until we prove that we were telling tall tales.
Yeah.
And that is the problem with the FAA is you need to prove yourself innocent. They have all the power to make your life horrible and prove that they don't have to have the proof of guilt.
Yeah. We were at AirVenture. I got just one of the high points in my life. I'm friends with Burt Rutan, and he flew me out to AirVenture from Idaho in the Starship. And if you go to AirVenture with Burt Rutan, it's kind of like touring the Vatican City with the Pope. Everything just happens right in front of you. And I was in the audience waiting for Burt to do one of his presentations, and one of the FAA guys were up there, and they were talking about some new flight rules or something. And he said, well, look, we allow you to do this and we allow you to do that. And during the question period, I said, I don't think we have this in the right order. You're not there to allow us to do things, right? I mean, we're supposed to be able to do whatever we want. You're supposed to tell us the few things that we can't do in order to maintain public safety. But the attitude of these guys is like, this whole airspace belongs to the government, belongs to us, and we may deign to allow you to have this moment here or this moment there. And you got to call them out on them, Gary. You're right, because they can get. Well, we were talking about Bob Hoover a few minutes ago, right? They tried to destroy him because somebody didn't like what he was doing. They grounded him for what, a couple years? Nearly killed him.
Yep. Yeah, it was 2 years, and I had an incident with the federales, as we like to call them. I busted a Bravo. I was climbing out of Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, and just I don't know whether I dialed the altitude in wrong or I didn't hear it right or something, but I busted the Bravo. I wasn't cleared in, busted it, and for 2 months, it was like, I was never going to fly again because the FAA just came down on me like a ton of bricks. Now, thank goodness I had, tracks and stuff that, showed that, I didn't cause any problems or anything, and the controllers never did anything. But the FAA themselves, I got off, with no punishment, but a very frank talk with a fairly nasty FAA inspector, and that was it. But still, I for a couple months I thought I was the dumbest pilot alive, and it was a simple mistake.
Did you ever hear the radio transcript from Harrison Ford when he landed on the taxiway at John Wayne?
Yep. Yeah, I have.
He's got that I am the dumbest man alive sound, and I think every one of us has had that that tone at some point or another on the radio. It's like, yes, I am an idiot, and I know I'm out here with people who are not idiots, and I'm really sorry for being an idiot, and I'll try real hard not to be an idiot next time.
May I call for my...
Yeah, that sounded like that could have been very like a real dangerous situation. What happened with him? I didn't read or hear the transcript, but that was everybody was very lucky on that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to, since we're an hour into this, I'm going to start opening up questions from the chat. So we will, guys in the chat, please. I know there's already been questions out there. Please put more questions out there. Sandra or John or Jill will pick them up and flag that to me. Let's see. I know I have a few here. Legatus Legion, I asked Gary, have you ever had to combine your two occupations, flying one of those water bombers to help put out fires? Or is that something you want to do?
Oh, well, one of the divisions of the company I work for did all the forest fires up in Canada. And I helped design a Turbo Commander 690 to be the scout plane for that. And we got to go up through Dryden, Canada and see the water bombers. Never really flew them. Only way I ever really combined my ability to fly and my fire department ability was that down in Montgomery County at Old Georgetown and Executive Boulevard, they blew up a building for demolish. And I got to be the roof sector safety officer at 1,800 feet circling the building for the chief. That was all. That was the only way I ever mixed the two together, really. We did angel flights. When Katrina hit down in Louisiana, I was in Monroe, and my wife called me and said, "Hey, the chief needs to talk to you." And my response was, does the chief know I'm retired? And the response was, yes, call the chief. And he was a friend of mine. I'd known him since he was a private. We were on the medic unit together. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, can you get into Louis Armstrong Airport and pick one of our guys up? He's got a family emergency, needs to get out. You're the only thing we got in the area. I'm like, yeah, but there's flight restrictions. He goes, do whatever you need to do. You have the full authority of the fire chief's office. Okay. He said, you got a fire department shirt on with you? You know, you got one with you? I said, yeah. He says, you got your gun, don't you? I said, yeah. He's like, and I'm thinking, what in the world am I got myself into? And I ended up going down there and picking up one of the guys who had a family member that got sick. And the thing that struck me the most going into the hurricane-ridden area was approach dropped me to tower. Tower was operating on a handheld radio. And they cleared me to land, and I landed and rolled out, taxied, and they gave me my departure clearance. Wow. And when I called them back up after I loaded up one of the guys that needed to get out of there, they basically told me, runway heading, expedite your climb to 4,000 and multiple targets, too many to call out. Wow. On a handheld. And they said, we're going to lose you in 5 miles. You're cleared to flight level 100 and contact approach when you can get them. And that was it.
Oh, wow.
And it was the most primitive thing I'd ever done on an IFR flight.
Wow. And that's something.
I was flying in a Cirrus, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. I got my glider rating in Mojave Desert, but I got my power rating at Torrance. And we were off of the Palos Verdes Peninsula. And this was the first time I'd ever seen anybody with the, with the Mode C traffic avoidance thing. And he basically had it turned off. He said, okay, look out the window and tell me how many airplanes you can see. And I looked around. I said, I got one over there and maybe 2. He said, yeah, okay. And he turns this thing on, and there's like 9. And sure enough, if you knew where to look for them, yeah, well, by God, there's an airplane out there. Those things are kind of handy.
Yeah.
Let's see. This one is for Bill. When the glider is released from the tow plane, what happens to the cable tow? Is it reeled in or left out?
No, it's left out, and that's why we would practice so many rope breaks, because as I say, the engine failure is very, very low. But basically, the usually, at least for us, and most of the places I know, they would use a crop duster like a Pawnee, which is it's got a lot of excess power for its weight, especially if it's not carrying pesticides or something. So the tow rope's a couple hundred feet long. It's got a little bit of a plastic thing on the end. It's just got a steel ring on the end. And since I ran ground operations for the glider port, the guy hooking up the gliders on the ground would show the like the front 4 or 5 feet. I suppose I should say the rear 4 or 5 feet of the rope, had to show it to the pilot so he could see that the thing was not like completely abraded, because they don't reel it in, which means that once the tow plane lands, that thing gets dragged across the runway, and it gets dragged across the runway on the taxi as well. But when you do release, even though there's no elastic in that rope, it does have kind of a bungee feel to it. And I'll tell you one thing about that, by the way. So my first solo, I was 7.5 hours or something in a glider, but my first solo was a formation flight. I mean, I'm 200 feet behind another airplane, and we would practice boxing the wake. We'd go all the way off to the right as far as we could with a lot of right rudder, and then we'd go down, and then we come across, and we come up, and so on. But letting go of that rope is the first time was fun, and being that close to another airplane right out of the gate was kind of fun too.
Okay. All right. Next question. This one would be for our maintenance person, Rich. Legatus Legion asks, I was always curious, when it comes to seasonal weather, do airplanes require different tires from those flying in the summer versus winter or snow, or are they all year-round, all-weather tires? Okay.
Hey, Raymond, are you talking to me?
Yeah, Rich.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So no. Normally tires are all season tires. You don't put specialized tires on unless you're going to do some, major backcountry flying or something along those lines.
Okay. This one is for anybody from Fiery Waco. It says, for those of you who aren't in this industry, what kept you from flying professionally? This one will go around the bend. Scott?
Well, it's interesting. I can't say that it has yet kept me from flying professionally, right? So, I mean, there's always opportunities that are out there, but probably flying for the airlines, I would say. I never really, I guess, I was so into my medical profession that I didn't really even contemplate, using flying as like a real professional means. I just didn't have it in my head. I kind of got interested in flying, for weird reasons, like we lived a certain distance from my family. I thought, hey, we just hop in a plane and shoot on up there and see them whenever we want. And, not knowing anything on how all that stuff works, but, and the cost of planes and so on and so forth, and, weight and balance, all those different things. It was just like fleeting thought. Once you start learning more, you thought like, you can't do that just on a regular basis. But, I think there's probably a lot of professional opportunities for flying that are not just the airlines. I mean, there's a lot of corporate jobs, there's right seat jobs. I mean, even if ferrying airplanes, there's opportunities for a lot of things to do like that, maybe it's a second career for me. We'll see.
Yeah. Rich.
Yes, sir.
The same thing. Is there something that's kept you from flying professionally?
Well, I will tell you that I did, have the opportunity to fly professionally with a regional airline, and I got through the ground school portion of it, and thought it was the place for me, and then I got into the simulator and realized just how platonic and how basically you have no control over your own destiny. Everything is planned out for you. All the, flight plans, all the, Mach numbers, altitudes, everything is all planned out for you. So really all you go in and do is, jump the seat, punch a couple buttons and, off you go. And that just, really didn't appeal to me. Plus I, had an opportunity with a friend of mine, who was, getting in on the ground floor of an IT startup, and he asked me to come and work for him again, and I told him if I ever got the opportunity I would. So I did, and I'm into a very good IT position right now. However, if the opportunity presents itself again, I may go ahead and look at it again.
Okay. All right. Bill, Deep has a question. Would you consider Sidney Cam to be in contention for the greatest aircraft designer of all time? Designed Hawker Hurricane, Typhoon, Tempest, Sea Fury, Hunter, and Harrier before death. I think I can answer that one too.
Those are all excellent aircraft, and as most of you probably know, Frank Whittle invented the jet engine. No relation that I'm aware of, but I'm sure we all come back from the same part of northwestern England. I'm not terribly well aware of him. If the question is who's the greatest aircraft designer of all time, for me it's pretty simple. It's going to be either Kelly Johnson or Burt Rutan, and Burt has, I don't know, I think I've actually forgotten the number of actual flying aircraft that he's built, but it's 27 or something. So at least. And I think despite the fact that Kelly Johnson was an absolute unbelievable genius, if it were up to me to give the award, I'd give Kelly second and I'd give it to Burt first, only because the design work that Burt does is so far out of, I'm close friends with him to my utter amazement. And I said to him once, I said, Burt, the only thing that you couldn't build would be a box for you to think outside of. And it's just, his designs are so revolutionary. You look at an aircraft and you think, what is that? That's got to be a Burt Rutan design. And Voyager, just Voyager, is alone just astonishing. You know, fly around the world on one tank of gas, and to have the just to break this down just super fast. I don't want to take too much time with this, but basically, when Burt was looking at Voyager, he said we got a problem here, and the problem is if we had to have enough power to climb, we need this much engine horsepower, but that much engine horsepower we cannot maintain the fuel for around the world. So basically what he did was he took the total climb power necessary and cut it in half. He had 2 engines, and all of the flight, that front engine was shut down. He just turned it on for when he needed to climb and mostly for the takeoff. And that kind of thing is brilliant. Spaceship One, he's got a problem. You want a smooth dart going up, but coming down, you want as much drag as possible. So the X-15 came down, had all these expensive heat tiles and all this other stuff. Burt just decided to break the airplane in half. I mean, the Spaceship One and the Virgin Galactic, it just breaks in half. And the tail feathers go up and the thing flat planes down, so he never gets above, I don't know, I think the indicated airspeed on reentry is like 140 knots or something like that. So that kind of revolutionary thinking is it to me. But I don't want to short the guy because the planes you mentioned are fantastic aircraft. The Spitfire, to me, is probably the most beautiful plane ever built. It's interesting to me because the Spitfire and the P-51, these are the two for me. And the Spitfire always reminds me of a Jaguar, and the P-51 always reminds me of like an American muscle car. You know, they just have that kind of vibe to them.
Hey, Bill, what do you think of the Boomerang? I thought that was just a revolutionary, so weird looking airplane, but I mean, it flies and it's got the range of like a King Air 200. I mean, that airplane to me is Rutan's best.
And it's his favorite, by the way. It's his favorite airplane. Yeah. For those of you not familiar with it, it's a twin, but it's completely asymmetrical. He's got 2 booms. Pilot sits in one. There's an engine there, and then there's another one in a boom, and another engine there. And it's not like they're on top of each other. They're closely offset, but they're so aerodynamically slick too. You know, Burt explained this to me, and it just, since it's flying form, it's just good to know. He said, look, if you want to do something, you can either add things or take them away. If you want to go faster, you can add a bigger engine, but a bigger engine means more fuel. More fuel means more wing and more fuselage, which means more drag, which means a bigger engine, and so on. And Burt's attitude was always just to take things off. The Long Easy's biggest problem on landing a Long Easy is the thing is so slick that even with the air breakdown, it's just really tough to control your speed on the way down. And Burt's kind of famous for saying, if you're building an airplane, the way to test the weight of the part is you take the part, you throw it up into the air, and if it comes back down again, it's too heavy. And that's a design philosophy.
Okay. Next one. Actually, I'm going to combine these two. These would be for Gary. Is it worth it to get a helicopter license? What's the typical salary of a chopper pilot? And then from John Rendell, he said he's recently heard of something called rotor vortex that tends to cut the tail off of the ship. Is that a real thing? Go for it.
All right, let's see. Depends on what your love is. You got to find if you love it or not. But if you're going to get your helicopter rating, there's a lot of opportunities. It is one way to fly without going to the airlines. You're going to end up probably either starting out doing instruction where the person sitting beside you has like 10,000 ways to kill you, and you can never let go of the helicopter for any moment in time until you get through that. And then going from instruction, you could probably do maybe some news helicopters or something. There's 3 or 4 in the Washington, D.C. area. You're going to build some time up, and then you will end up probably flying for an EMS provider. I know a lot of the guys have gone down to Fort Rutger and done instrument flying with the Army as a civilian contractor. Similarly, what I did with the King Air. State police in Maryland have a second in command program on their S-70. It's not an S-76. Augusta, and Virginia has a helicopter that you don't have to be a police officer for, and Maryland State's the same way. Let's see, U.S. Park Police, you do have to be a sworn officer for that. And then there's all kind of stuff with Stat Medevac, PHI, and all that all around the area to become a helicopter pilot and do some fun things and off-site landings and things like that. And you talked about the main rotor system cutting the tail off. It is prevalent in certain aspects. That's why you never want to do low G maneuvers in a helicopter. That rotor system will get light and it will flex enough to cut the tail off. And that's
bad, right?
that is bad when your tail rotor comes off. It pretty much becomes unflyable. There's also a thing called retreating blade stall, which we is airplane people, we figure, a stall, it's recoverable. Not in a helicopter so much. There's just more ways to die in a helicopter. So,
Ray, can I add something to that real quick?
Sure.
I had about 15 hours in helicopters, and if you want to become a helicopter pilot, prepare to be humbled. That would be my primary advice to you. Somebody described hovering to me like standing on a beach ball that's floating in a pool, and that's exactly right. And I was in a Hughes 300, and the instructor said, "All right, I'm gonna handle the cyclic. I'm gonna hold our side to side position up, and I've got the collective. I'm going to hold our up and down position. You're just using your feet on the rudder pedals, and you point the helicopter towards that tree. Ready? Okay, you've got the pedals." And things starts. And he said, "We talking about the same tree here, Bill? The tree right in front of it? Yeah, I'm doing my best." All of these inputs affect the other. When you change one input, affects the other two, and it's been a long time since I learned to ride a bike, but the thing I remember most about helicopter training was hovering is utterly impossible, and then suddenly it's not. And it's just that muscle memory just suddenly just becomes there. But before then, you will provide some high level amusement for anybody who happens to be in the area watching.
I know that for a fact. I actually tried the same thing, and yeah, I couldn't hover.
Well, one of the things we all know as instructors is we try to do the intro flights, and I would take intro students up, and we have an area at our airport. It's called the tire area, and we bring them back in there, and I'd start get them there. It's okay, be on the controls with me and all this, and I get them talking about what they do or whatever, and I just slowly let go of everything, and they were sitting there pretty much within for a brand new pilot in a hover until I'd look over at them and go, "Hey, by the way, you're hovering." And the minute you told them you were hovering, you better be ready to recover the helicopter.
There's VHS footage of me taken from some friends who are a good distance away on my very first helicopter lesson. And it's all it is from far away. You just see this Hughes 300 just in this perfect cover, and it's just hanging there perfectly. And all of a sudden, they're going, whoa, 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 whoa. And then it just becomes perfectly stable again. And then it's like, perfectly stable again. It's like, this is where I've got the airplane, and this is where the instructor's got it. Here's where I have the aircraft, and here's where the instructor has the aircraft.
Well, I tell you that the funny thing is with that government job I had the ability. We had a contract with the NTSB, and this most scary part about that was we had NTSB agents going out and doing crash reconstruction and all of this, and they were out on all kind. And my job was to take them up in a helicopter and show them what the maneuvers were, what an auto rotation was, what a confined space was. And you get them in there, and I remember one of them just looked at me. We landed off airport in a confined space, and I set it down. They looked over at me and went, "Oh my God, I never understood what a confined space was until you put me in this hole." And I'm thinking to myself, you're the one writing up NTSB reports deciding what the cause of this was, and you don't have a basic understanding. Which also led me to the fact that I had the ability one time on a helicopter accident to go out to the place that did the metallurgy investigation and all this of the helicopter. It's a farm out on the eastern shore, and he's got a microscope and maybe one or two things in a big field of bent up helicopters. And I'm sure the guy was very intelligent, but it appeared to me that he was just Bubba Farmer. And I'm thinking, and this guy is the one determining the accident cause. And I asked him a couple of questions, and the answers I got made me think, yeah, not so much.
My helicopter flight instructor was a Huey pilot in Vietnam, and you can talk about enclosed spaces. The Huey rotors are so heavy and carry so much momentum. He said that sometimes they would just go in and just use the rotors to clear. They would just basically come down like a weed eater. And he also told me that a Huey, if you have a Huey at operational RPM, there's so much momentum in the rotors that you can, from the ground, kill the engine, take off into a hover, do a 360-degree pedal turn, and put it back down again, just on the momentum stored in the rotors.
Yes, you can.
Wow.
And you cannot do that in a Robinson.
No.
You want to talk about you got all that time as a glider, auto rotation in a Robinson, you're a glider. Except you're looking at your feet to where you're going to land.
Has a negative glide ratio.
Okay, let's see. Any other? A few comments out there about the helicopters beating the ground into submission. That's how they get in the air.
They're fun.
Let's see. Okay, this one will go around the horn. And the question was, what was the scariest experience flying? And we will start with Rich.
Alrighty, so scariest experience flying. It's not going to sound like, it's very scary, but it was very, very scary for me. I'd taken off, wintertime, the airplane, weather had just been, crap and couldn't really fly. So went ahead and pumped up the tires, checked it out, good to go. Next day I was meeting a very good friend of mine, probably 100 miles away, for lunch. Family. Took a buddy of mine with me. We were both working towards our instrument rating, didn't have it yet. And we're flying my dad's airplane, so 172 Skyhawk. I got some upgrades on it, but so we get down there, no problem. Have a great lunch, great visit with my friend and his family. We decide we need to start working towards home, and about 3/4 of the way home, the engine is running kind of rough. So I do all the things you're supposed to do. I wrench in the mixture, that didn't help. Check the carb heat, that didn't help. And my friend that was with me said, Rich, your engine's running a little rough. And I said, yeah, you noticed that, did you? So I was talking to Proach and, just getting VFR flight following. And I told the controller that, I'd like to go ahead and duck into, Buchanan Airport and, see, I didn't use the words emergency, but, just said I need to land. And he said, okay, you're cleared to Buchanan. And, we landed and, got on the ground, taxied off the runway, shut the engine down, called my brother, who is an A&P and now an IA. And he said, well, fire it back up and do a mag check, and that'll tell you, what the problem is. Well, I put it on the left mag and the engine quit. So basically I had failure of the ignition harness that powers the top spark plugs in an airplane. In an airplane, you have 2 spark plugs per cylinder, not just one like in your car. So, and they're powered by independent magnetos, which are old 30s farm tractor implements. But they don't require electrical power and, fairly efficient for what they are. So one of those had failed. now, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now how am I going to get home? And, through some phone calls, left the airplane there, got it tied down, and, got friends who come pick us up and bring us back to Morgantown. And I didn't realize it until I got in my friend's car that my knees were shaking.
Yep.
So, yeah. And again, it was totally unexpected. It wouldn't have, hurt anything to fly the airplane to Morgantown. It would have just, been a little rough running engine and a little reduction in speed. But I didn't know that. So I elected to put it on the ground. And that's one thing that I'll say to all the pilots of the group: don't be afraid to talk to ATC. I get flight following just about everywhere I go. I know there are some people that they very much do not want to talk to ATC in any way, shape, form, or fashion, and I call them stupid because if something goes wrong, you got Big Brother looking over your shoulder and can give you options. So sorry, that's probably a little bit longer answer than what was needed, but that's the way it went down.
And he's got radar eyes too. Flight following is really awesome. It's just great. It's just a whole nother level of safety out there to have somebody, looking at a radar screen telling you if there's an airplane you missed.
Right. Scott, you.
Yeah. So, and just to kind of reiterate what you're saying about the flight following thing is that, I was one of those pilots being an early pilot, but I was afraid to talk to ATC and didn't want to bother the controllers, especially approach people. They're always busy. You hear them chattering in the background. But, I was told before that this is their job. Their job is to be up there keeping you safe. And I spoke with someone who worked as an approach controller, and they said, this is what we do every day. We help out people. So don't feel, nervous about calling and asking for help. If we can't do it, we'll let you know. And then you can always call us back later on. Workload is different, and we'll be able to pick you back up again. I said, but I've never had a problem with, never had a problem in saying oh, I can't believe you're bothering me or any of that kind of stuff. I've always had a great experience with working with the approach controllers in our area. All of them are really great. They've always been friendly, been very, very, very helpful. But to get back to your question about the scariest moment, I guess as a younger pilot or a low time pilot, I guess I don't have as many big moments, thankfully. But I will say, when I was doing my flight training, even in the early stage, I was probably 5 hours of doing my flight training, and I mean, some of you may have had a certain experience with, working with certain certified flight instructors or the CFIs that just don't match with your personality or don't match with the kind of training level that you're at. But I remember being, so we were flying in around Middlebury, where there was a grass strip. I guess the guy wanted to demonstrate maybe his ability or the different opportunities you can do as a pilot. But we had landed on the short field grass strip that your final approach was coming over Lake Champlain, and you slipped in over wires onto this grass strip. So he's going through doing this stuff, and he's like, oh yeah, you could do this on the next time around. And I'm thinking, no, this is not for me. I almost to the point where it's there's no way I'm doing this, right? Coming in, slipping right over the wires, landing on the soft field, and then taking off, of course, into those wires the opposite way over the lake. I was like, this may not be for me, So, that was a scary moment for me that almost kind of turned my head in the direction of not continuing on with the flight training. But, it all worked out okay, and I, continued on after that. But that was a little scary moment for me, seeing, that those possibilities of trying to do that. I'm like, am I ever going to be able to do this? But, I guess he was skilled at what he did, but maybe that might have been the best experience to put a 5 hour pilot in.
Okay. Gary.
Well, I would say I was flying an Aztec that I actually owned out of Hagerstown, and I had brought one of my flight instructors with me because he wanted to get some multi-time. And we took off on runway 27 out of Hagerstown, and about 600 feet, the left engine decided that the number 3 cylinder no longer wanted to play nicely and departed the aircraft into the farmer's field.
Ow!
And when I turned crosswind, it was when I realized, it broke the fuel line, and that fuel line is now on fire.
Oh!
Turned downwind, And I calmly look at the guy sitting beside me and say, hey, you have one job. You reach down between the seats, you confirm the left engine, and turn the fuel off, which put the fire out. And the funniest thing I remember very vividly was I looked over at that engine, and the first thing that came to mind is, that's going to be expensive.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Never really thought about, gee, I'm going to land or anything. And I told the tower, I said I needed to return back a priority landing. And he's sitting there screaming at me to declare an emergency and all this. And I just kind of looked at him and went, we're fine. Shut up. The tower had one other person in the pattern. We got downwind. They were trying to work it. And I said, yeah, I'm just going to take the option of the emergency now. Well, they pushed everybody out of the way. Wanted to know if I needed the equipment. To my response was absolutely not. I do not need AFFF foam destroying and totaling my aircraft. And now we learned it causes cancer, which I'm glad we didn't do anyhow. And we landed. I rolled it on, and it was left engine, so I was great at taxiing left. Couldn't taxi right for anything. And we taxied around, and the controller said, oh, well, expedite your crossing of 27 back to the hangars. And I said, I'll stand by and wait for landing aircraft. We aren't going to be doing anything in an expeditious manner today with one engine.
You said it was expensive, Gary. I had a nose gear collapse in Visalia, and the nose of the plane goes down, and all I could see were $100 bills just flashing past the window. It's like going through a blizzard.
Oh, yeah. It's just all I could think of is, oh, I don't even want to think of how expensive that one's going to cost. But
yeah.
I don't remember all the communication in the tower. I was busy focused. You get tunnel vision. I mean, I guess I'm lucky. I don't necessarily get stupid in an emergency, and that's probably because of all the training I've had. But you don't remember absolutely everything you did either.
Mm-hmm.
Don't drop the airplane to fly the microphone.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Bill, yours.
Well, I've had 3 engine failures in an airplane with 1 engine in it, and I think probably the one I remember most clearly was I was coming out of Dublin, Georgia, in a Velocity XLRG, which is a 4-seat pusher, big airplane, retractable gear, and 300 horse in the back, and this would just go like a banshee. And we were climbing out of, we'd gone north, and we'd stopped at Dublin on the way up for refueling. We stopped to refuel on the way back. And as I was climbing out, there's nothing down there but just endless trees. And I started to feel this vibration. We have one of those, engine monitors with a 6 bars, 1 for each cylinder. And the number 3 cylinder bar just starts going like to nothing. And it's those number 3 cylinders, Gary. You can't trust them. And I remember thinking that's not good. So this vibration got real bad. So I just immediately came back on the power. Had a friend of mine in the front seat who was also a pilot. He says, maybe we should just kind of push on to the next one. It's like, no, we won't be doing that. We're going to be landing just as fast as we can. I just landed at this airport. I know it, and we're close to it. So there was when that engine first went out, speaking for myself, you could start to feel the panic kind of nibbling at your ankles, like a little rat that's just kind of gnawing at you. And then, as I said before at the beginning of the show, it just this like somebody just threw a lever in my head, and it was that training came back. I say, you are a glider pilot. You're in a glider again. This is just going to be another glider landing. So land the glider, man. And that's what we did. It was a non-event. Kept the energy high. Got over the field with a lot of altitude. Did S turns on final and didn't drop the gear to the last minute to make sure we had the field made. But my instructor taught the reptile what to do, and the reptile did what it was supposed to do. And the only thing I would say to people out there in terms of emergencies and stuff is, it's my personal opinion. If you are ever in a situation like that, get the nose down. That's instantaneously the first thing you have to do. You have to get that nose down, because if you stall that airplane, you're not in an airplane anymore. Now you're in just, a couple 1,000 pounds of aluminum and fiberglass, and you're not going anywhere. And the people I know who've gotten themselves really badly hurt or killed in airplanes, every one of them, was a case where they stalled the airplane trying to stretch a glide or whatever. The percentage, the chance of fatality is related to your speed when you hit the ground, but mostly to the angle, almost exclusively to the angle of impact. And if you're flying an airplane, even a glider, and you have that thing under control, and you make a very low angle impact with the ground, you're going to walk away from it. They're pretty much going to walk away from it. If you don't, and you go in at a steep angle, you got real problems.
Yeah.
So Bill, the takeaway from this is that you've had all these engine failures is not to fly with Bill.
Not to fly with Bill. That's exactly right. You know, I'll tell you a story about that. My mom was a flight attendant for BOAC on Stratocruisers, the last of the big piston engine airliners, and she had two emergencies. One of them, they lost 3 engines over the North Atlantic, and they're going to go in, and they got to like 1,000 feet. They got one of them started again, and then there was another one, and some pilot said to another pilot, said, "Don't fly with that Edith Potts person because she's been in two major emergencies." And the other guy said, "Are you nuts? She's been in 2 emergencies. They both came back perfectly fine." This is exactly who we want to have on the plane.
Mine was, it was nerve-wracking at the beginning. I only found out it was scary after I came back. I was on my long cross country in Ohio, coming out of Cleveland. I went to the west because it had to be a touch and go, and then the long part of the country into College Park, not College Park, mid-state in Pennsylvania. I forgot, but I'm flying. Clouds are coming in, but before then, what was happening in Cleveland is they kept vectoring me all over the fixed point dryer. So I'm wasting a lot of time just being vectored. I do my touch and go at the airport in Ohio, start coming back or start my cross country, and I keep going. And then I'm starting to look at fuel. Fuel was fine, but it looked like my initial airport was not going to work out. So I got on control. I said, I think I'm going to need an alternate airport. And they said this. And as I'm coming in for landing, I knew that the alternate was marginal at the time, but it was one of these, I had to put the plane down, and I'm over there, I'm coming in. I decide, no, this is not happening. I go missed. As I push the throttle and I happen to look down at the ground, and I was maybe about a foot from the runway. That really scared the crap out of me. There was an airport close to it that was in better conditions. I landed, and then I got back to Cleveland, got the mandatory chew out for, they said, okay, you did okay, but you shouldn't have gotten into the situation. And yeah, you still got to repeat your cross country. So I did it in better weather the next day, and the airport, this is what spooked me. The airport I was going to land at was surrounded in 3 ways by mountains.
Yeah, it's not fun.
And I said, somebody's looking out for me.
There's an embarrassing number of fuel starvation accidents where they discover that there's, the left tank is utterly empty and there's like 14 gallons in the right tank. And the reason they ran out of fuel was because they forgot to switch their tanks. Mm-hmm. And that happens fairly often. So don't do that.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, we are at about 1 hour, 49 minutes. This has been a great panel, guys. I would again like to thank you all for attending. This was absolutely fantastic. I hope the chat loved it. And any last words? I'll go around the table. Anything you want to say before I start with show notes and saying bye to the chat? Bill.
Yeah. Gary talked about this, and it really needs to be said. If you decide you want to fly for fun, start your flying lessons, find somebody who's going to put you in the situations that could go wrong and almost certainly won't. This idea of protecting your students from stressful things is it's not good. It's dangerous. You will find that the more training you have and the more prepared you are, the more confident you become, and the by far the less of that adrenaline shock you get. And I studied a lot of accident reports, not because I'm morbid, but because I want to find out what people like me did wrong. And you will find that if you have good training, virtually every serious accident that you read about, there will come a point where you go, oh, see, I wouldn't, that was a mistake. That was this. But everybody can make mistakes, you know? So I would just say, you just find somebody who wants to train you aggressively and put you in uncomfortable situations, so that if you ever are in the unlikely event that you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, there's no instructor next to you, you'll know what to do.
Okay. Actually, we got 2 more questions, and I want to make sure the chat gets their say. Dave asks, and anybody can jump in on this. Dave asks, Spitfire in the Battle of Britain or Mustang in the spring of 1944?
I think about this all the time. All the time. I really do. A Spitfire. Yeah, definitely. Going up to defend your country, that's as good as it got in a Spitfire. That's it.
All right. And then this is going to be, you can all say this at the same time. Have any of the panel ever had an encounter on radio with an air traffic controller that you wanted to A, throttle, or B, get him a straitjacket?
Of course.
I had a guy turn an airplane into me on final.
Oh.
And it's the kind of thing you would do if there were parallel runways, only there was only one runway. And that business about always check the approach, before you take off, no matter whether you're cleared or not, those guys make mistakes too. I did have an experience with an air traffic controller who I wanted to buy a drink for. Actually, I was coming back in a Sky Arrow, which is an 80. It's like a 21st century Super Cup. I was coming through Palm Springs, and right there at El Cajon Pass is like this giant Venturi. So that's why they put all the windmills there. So I was flying into a 65 knot headwind in an airplane that had an 85 knot top speed. And I'm looking down, watching the cars just go zipping past me. And this instructor said, "What are you flying?" I said, "A Sky Arrow." I said, "Yeah, what kind of airplane is that?" I said, "It's the kind of airplane that's got a calendar instead of an airspeed indicator. And hang on a second, I'm about to be passed by a hot air balloon." So I was on frequency with this guy for a long time. And finally he said, "Okay, well, 4 Alpha, I'm taking off for the night. You have a good time out there." I said, "Thank you, sir. When are you going to be back?" He says, "Back tomorrow morning at 8:00. I said, I'll probably still be here." So they're great guys if you treat them with respect. I've never had a real problem with them.
Scott or Rich, how about you guys?
Go ahead, Scott.
I can't say that I have any bad experiences with controllers. Like I said, I've had a really good experience with all the people that I've had spoken with and have helped me out. Like I said, you can almost be as a low-time pilot. You make mistakes. You know what I mean? You just do. You make communication errors, and they know, and they weren't ones to make fun of me, which is good. Sometimes they'll use lingo you haven't heard. So when they're asking you to do something, and they'll say something like, straighten out your base leg, and I'm like not thinking about that. I'm all thinking about ready to turn final, and they have to speak slowly and say, "Straighten out your base leg," and then I'm like, oh, it finally clicks. They're like, okay, and then they explain afterwards, well, this is why I had to do that, and then it just you have to apologize to them. But no, I think everybody's been really, really great with that. Just as a comment, I would say, in terms of like my training, what I've kind of always kind of seemed to ascribe to is that find good instructors. That's one thing, and get around pilots that are good pilots, because you don't want to be with one of the yahoos that does stuff that's rogue and not safe, and fly frequently. I mean, I said that since I've been more consistent with flying, I've felt better about flying, and there's a confidence level with flying. I think that if you get a lack of confidence, you start making mistakes and you panic a little bit more. So in my experience, I think continue doing training and continue being consistent with flying. And, we've always talked about the proficiency versus currency kind of thing. And you certainly want to stay proficient, not just current, because it does give you a little bit more confidence. And then the regularity of doing it certainly makes you a better pilot, I've found.
Okay. Gary, I have a demand for this. I've had a question on it, and I've actually got two. We want to hear a Sandra story.
Let's see. When there's so many, what to pick from. My Venmo account will be open, and so your wife is getting her. We're doing training for her commercial, and no matter what I do, I cannot get her to land on the 1,000-foot marks on the center of the runway. And we go through all this, and I start thinking about what she does for a living, and she's a freaking ICU nurse, so she's under stress. So on the next circuit around, I put her under a bunch of stress, and she put it right on the numbers and right on the center line. And I was like, oh, so you fly better under stress than you do just, casually sitting in the cockpit flying around. So when she goes for her check ride with the examiner, who the legend of Annabelle, Sarah, two of us had big numbers set out, and we parked in the grass at Frederick before there was a tower. And we're sitting there with numbers rating her landings while she was on her check ride. And the examiner just looked at her and goes, well, what's that all about? He goes, well, that's my instructor and a friend of his in the golf cart rating my landings. And the examiner thought it was great.
Yep. There. We've gotten the Sandra questions out of the way. Gary.
Then there was a time that there was recently where this Rogue 172 got in the way when I was landing in the Citation, but we won't recommend say who was in it. And then didn't hear the controller, and no, it's just
okay. Gary, do you want to any final words to wrap up the panel here?
Nope. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, Rich, you.
Great communication all night. So.
Okay, and Scott.
No, as I said before, thank you very much for having me on here. It's great hearing everybody's input and meeting some new people who are out there flying. It was a good experience and being on the forum here, and yeah, appreciate it.
All right, I enjoyed this. I hope all four of you did, and I know I'm watching the chat, and everybody there seems to have liked this. I've already heard, looks like I saw in here someone saying that they want you guys back. So
anytime.
Yes, we'll have you.
I like being surrounded by steely-eyed missile men.
So we're going to do some notes for what's coming up, and then I will start saying good night to the rest of the chat. He did give some last words. All right. Next Wednesday, we're going to have the ladies back. They'll be talking about the 99s and the upcoming Air Race Classic. We will have Lynn Kaywood on. On June 1st, we're going to have Dillard Dross. On the 4th of June, we're going to have Just Cuz, hopefully with film from the Martinsburg Comic Con, my book signing. On the 8th, we're going to have a DS9 talk with Antiderivative Jill. We're going to be talking bromances and frenemies. Extra points for whoever can guess who we'll be talking about. On the 15th, we'll have Spencer Richard, musician, and I am continuing to schedule things for the summer. We're very busy upcoming. And again, I would like to thank the chat that was here. Amazing people. Great questions. We had Renier, Antiderivative Jill, Legatus Legionii, Lenrod, Snail Messiah, Deef, Psychosis 29, John Rendell, Andy Masterson, Tim the Enchanter, Fiery Waco, Jackie Blue, and I had some other ones. I want to make sure they're all recognized. And we had Andy Masterson, Darrow Brewer, Clobbering Times, John Rendell, and Mayor McCheese. Thank you very much for an Antiderivative Jill. And so thank you very much for attending my producer is Pop Culture Crusader and the Comic Relief Pop Culture Curator, the Comic Relief Crusader, and of course, Norda Pupus Cuber. Thank you
Ray,
all. Yes, Gary.
Are you a 2/3 member plus 3 of the 99s?
I'm a 45. I'm a 45 and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Tim the Enchanter. Let's see. Fire My Waco. Janet from Another Planet. So we had a very full chat tonight, and I am glad everybody enjoyed it. This Saturday, we're going to have Just Cuz. You know what happens there. Be prepared. Be worried. Again, thank you very much to the panel. Bill Whittle, thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure. It's fun.
Gary Smith, thank you very much, sir.
No problem.
Richard Judy, thank you. It's always a pleasure. It looks like he's got some breaking up. And Scott Florek, thank you very much for attending. And
yeah, thanks for the invite, Raymond.
You are most welcome. So everybody tonight, be safe. Hit the like button, please. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Everybody be safe, be healthy, stay dry. If you're thinking about flying, don't absolutely try it. Absolutely try it. Discovery flights are available. Once you get that kick, you won't want to unkick. So everybody, let's continue to make waves, and everybody have a good night.
All right. Good night, all.
This segment is brought to you by thedolphinboys.com.
I'm checking out, Ray. I know you said you wanted to talk afterwards, but everybody's gone. I had a great time.
Oh, I'm glad you did. We're going to have to get you back, sir.
I loved it. You guys take care.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.